Verses 1 to 4, which was actually a good thing as the gospel was spread. So much so that Philip took the gospel to what area? Samaria, okay? And that was a remarkable thing because the Jews had little dealings with the Samaritans. But that barrier now is slowly collapsing, and the gospel now going to these, and will eventually go, of course, to the Gentiles. We saw the conversion of Simon, studied that, and his subsequent fall from grace, and his subsequent restoration, as Peter prayed on his behalf for forgiveness. So now we are looking still at Philip. He's called the evangelist elsewhere. This is not the apostle Philip. This is the evangelist Philip. And he's going place to place preaching the word and teaching the truth. And now he has been told to go where? By God. Well, he's to go to teach a man from Ethiopia, but he is supposed to go from Jerusalem to a road unto Gaza, and it is a deserted area. So Adam, if you'll read for us, starting back in verse 26 and go through 29 to get it started.
Now an angel of the Lord said to Philip, "Rise and go toward the south to the road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is a desert place." And he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who had the charge of all her treasure, and had come to Jerusalem to worship, and was returning seated in his chariot, and he was reading the prophet Isaiah. And the Spirit said to Philip, "Go over and join this chariot."
So 26 says that an angel of God spoke to Philip. 29 says the Spirit spoke to Philip. And I don't see any contradiction there. Obviously, this message is from God, whether it's an angel or a spirit or God himself. The source is the same. It is a message from heaven. And he spoke to Philip, and he is to head to the road that goes from Jerusalem to Gaza, and it goes down. We've pointed out many times, anytime you leave Jerusalem, you're going downhill. And I probably said this many times, but in our Bible land trip, when we left Jerusalem to go to Jericho, I mean, you're going down. It's about a 3,300 feet drop in a short distance. And I thought you could take your bicycle and leave Jerusalem. You would not have to pedal one time. You'd wear your brakes out, but you would not have to pedal out. Now, going back to Jerusalem, you'd probably be carrying your bike. I can't imagine pedaling uphill. But it is a downhill trip when you leave Jerusalem. So the text says that he, as Adam read 27, and we talked about this, he arose and went. Who was the eunuch's boss? The queen. Candace. Again, that most believe is her title, not her name. Just like if I'll call you Sister Tanya, sister is not your name. Or Mr. Adam. Mr. is not a name, it's a title. And so most believe this Candace, much like President or Pharaoh, is a title, not necessarily her name, but that's not either matter of importance here or there. She is the queen. Again, what's the king doing? He's taking it easy because the king was almost a god, and it was beneath him to do any type of work. And so he just sat on the throne and smiled and did what he wanted to do. And the queen really ran the country because it wasn't beneath her to do work. And that was the custom and culture then. What was the eunuch's job? What did he do? He was treasurer, okay? And obviously you would have to be a trusted man to be in charge of the king's money. And you wouldn't put just anybody in that position. And we've also noted that he is a eunuch. He's been emasculated. We talked about that last week. And for various reasons, pagan cultures would do that. And this would obviously prevent any type of immorality between the eunuch and any of the women there in the palace. Now, the eunuch has been where? Where has he been? He's been in Jerusalem. What has he been doing there? He's been worshiping, okay? He's not worshiping as per the New Testament church. It's believed that he was a proselyte to Judaism, and so his worship, as of verse 27, would have been under a religion that has now been what? Abolished, taken out of the way. He doesn't know that. He's about to be taught that, but he doesn't know that yet. And so we all would agree that here's a man who obviously was a very good man. Again, a respected man, a religious man, but at the end of the day, as far as salvation is concerned, he's what? He's lost. Not that we're his judge, but according to the Bible, he has not yet come to know Christ and obey Christ. So though he has all these sterling qualities, he's still nonetheless lost and needs teaching the truth. That's what Philip's all about. So in verse 28, he's returning. That is, he's going home. Been in Jerusalem, going to the road to Gaza. Gaza, that's a city on the Mediterranean coast, flat land. So he's going to make good time from Jerusalem down to that road, the flat land there on the coast. He'll make good time heading home. And so that's where he's heading, about 1,000 miles one way. 1,000 miles one way, probably attending one of the Jewish festivals. But he's heading home now. He's riding, of course, in a chariot. That would have been, I guess, some of the most comfortable transportation then that they had. And it would have been what they had, a fast means of transportation, probably about the fastest that they had, depending upon the animal, obviously. Some of the chariots had 2 wheels. Some of them had 4 wheels. It was all a matter of preference. And there would be pros and cons to 4 wheels versus 2. More than likely, a 4-wheel chariot would have more stability. I'd much rather ride a bicycle than a unicycle for that reason. You've got more stability on 2 wheels than 1 wheel. So there would be pros and cons to this, but the most common chariots had 2 wheels. And as he's riding, he's reading. What prophet is he reading? Isaiah. This is Isaiah. He's reading the prophet Isaiah. So this tells us that the eunuch has his own personal copy of at least the scroll of Isaiah. If I'm correct, Isaiah is the longest book in the Old Testament, if I'm correct. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Chapter-wise, at least. Now, I'm not counting words. I believe Isaiah, am I right? Psalms, other than Psalms. Prophet-wise, Isaiah would be the longest of the prophets. So he would not have had a book as we have the Bible. Obviously, their books were in a much different format. He would have had a scroll. And what they did was they took papyrus reeds and they pasted pages together and rolled them up. You had 2 sticks. We called them sticks. They had a more technical name than that. We called them sticks, and you had it rolled up on one end, and you would roll it, turn this one to turn the pages or to move it along. It was the best they had. I mean, you couldn't flip pages like we can quickly. You had to roll the thing and then unroll the thing. But it was the best they had. That's all they knew. But again, to have your own personal copy of the scroll of Isaiah meant that you had to be a person who had what? Money, because no printing presses then. How did they make scrolls then? They took their whatever instrument they had writing and they did it by hand. Can you imagine the hours it would have taken for one scribe to have copied the book of Isaiah? You go home tonight, get your pen and paper out, and you just start writing the book of Isaiah. When you get done with those 66 chapters, call me up and tell me how long it took you to write the book of Isaiah. Now, of course, they're not writing in English. They're writing in Hebrew, more than likely, going from right to left. And it's an amazing thing. My point is, for you to have your own personal copy of the scroll of Isaiah, you had to have money. It could have been that he bought that when he was in Jerusalem for that worship. And he's anxious to open up and read it. Can't put it down. And so that's what he is reading. So again, what a great man. He's studying the Bible as he travels. He's not daydreaming or sleeping, not that there's anything wrong with that, but he's reading the Bible, a good man, a religious man, and you have to tip your hat to him. And he's like a lot of folks today who are sincere, who are moral, who think they're right religiously, but are not. And either they haven't been taught the truth, or some of them don't want to be taught the truth. But either way, they are in a precarious position, as was he, and we want to do our utmost to make sure that we're doing our part to tell others about the Lord and look for opportunities as Philip finds here. So 29, now the angels already told Philip to go, 26, but did not tell him in verse 26 exactly where, or at least who he's going to. Just go down that direction. Now 29, he's going to get further information or instructions. So the Spirit said to Philip, I don't know if he talked out loud or talked in his mind. Somehow God communicated to Philip in a specific way now where you're going to go and to whom you're going to speak. So go near, 29, and join yourself to this chariot. That would tell me, or I would wonder a lot of things here. One thing I guess I would wonder would be, how on earth did Philip catch up to the chariot? Generally speaking, horses and chariots, or donkeys and chariots, whatever animals pulling the chariot is going to be faster than we can walk. Faster than we can run. A horse can travel, what's the maximum top? I don't know, I'm not a horse person. Top speed of a horse. Top speed of a man, goodness, 8 miles an hour, maybe 10 miles an hour, and you won't sustain that long. So either, and we don't know how Philip is traveling either. But it seems from verse 30, how's he traveling? He's running. And now maybe God gave Philip miraculous ability physically to catch up to the chariot, or maybe, all we're doing is maybe, it doesn't matter, maybe the chariot's going slow enough and Philip is able to overtake the chariot.
If you're going to travel that distance, you're going to let the horse walk. You're not going to run that horse.
Right. Somehow, some way, God sees to it that they meet. So he's close enough. God points out that chariot. Now, a lot of folks believe, keep in mind, this is a high-ranking government official. Usually, high-ranking government officials, do they travel all by themselves? Does President Biden just hop on his bicycle and go wherever he wants to? He probably would like to. But I wouldn't want to be president, because you've got Secret Service, for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life, you will never be alone in that sense. Most believe, and we can't prove any of this, and we're just sort of talking about some of this, but most believe that he would have had an entourage with him, a sort of a convoy with him. The Bible doesn't say that, it doesn't matter. The point is, here's this chariot. He may have several chariots, but this chariot. All right, so Adam, we want to pick up now reading verse 30 through 33.
So Philip ran to him and heard him reading Isaiah the prophet and asked, "Do you understand what you are reading?" And he said, "How can I unless someone guides me?" And he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. Now, the passage of the scripture that he was reading was this: like a sheep he was led to the slaughter, and like a lamb before its shearer is silent, so he opens not his mouth. And in his humiliation justice was denied him. Who can describe his generation? For his life is taken away from the earth.
So God said go, and the text says in verse 30 that Philip ran. He ran to the chariot. I'm a little bit timid when it comes to talking to people and door knocking. I guess that's just me. You wonder sort of what reaction is going to be. I don't run up to doors and knock. I will walk slowly and I will knock. And in this day and age, probably best maybe not to run up to a house. I don't know.
How far distance the Ethiopian fellow was from all of this? He could have just started down the road, right?
What he could have, in any event, it's the road from Jerusalem to Gaza. Those are things we don't know.
Right.
We really just don't know. But we know that he overtakes and runs. My point is he ran. He ran too. What Old Testament prophet ran away from when God told him to go here? Jonah. He ran away from as fast as he could go. Philip ran to the mission God had for him. So that's, again, a great trait of Philip. He is ready to obey God. We want to have that same zeal. He hears him read Isaiah the prophet. Old Testament passage. And what Old Testament passage from Isaiah is he reading? What chapter?
53.
53. My Bible says, the cross-reference says verses 7 and 8. Now, keep in mind the eunuch did not have a chapter 53, nor did he have a verse 7 and verse 8. What did he have? One long scroll. It was not divided into chapters and verses and so forth. And so, how convenient we have it. He overhears him reading the prophet Isaiah and asks the question, do you understand what you are reading? What does that question imply? That maybe the eunuch did not understand what he's reading. I mean, if Philip knew that here's a PhD fella who wrote the book of Isaiah and knew it from like the back of his hand, he would have known, he would have understood it. But the question, do you understand what you're reading, implies on Philip's part that he did not understand. He's just asking, do you understand what you are reading? There are some people who would take great offense at being asked that question. Do I look like a dummy to you? Is it any of your business whether I understand this or not? Are you a know-it-all? Who are you to ask? It's how some people respond, because, and some become perhaps even angry for a stranger to walk up and ask such a thing, but Philip means no harm by this. He's simply wanting an opening. He knows that God has directed him to this man, and he's wanting an opening to, as we would say, break the ice and, strike up a conversation and have a Bible study together.
Well, he also hears him reading the prophet. Now, you don't have all the details about what he hears him reading, but obviously, you read something difficult, you can kind of pick up if somebody's struggling. For
Right.
AP, for AP
Right.
government, when they have to read John Locke's two treatises, which is written in the 1600s, they don't, students aren't going
Right.
to understand that right off the bat. I can pick up if they're not. So probably a similar situation
Right.
there, where Philip is ask him, do you understand what you're reading? But he already knows the answer to it.
Right.
He doesn't come and it's not an insulting thing. He
Right.
picks up that he's struggling.
You can tell by the tone, and he's reading out loud.
Yeah.
The fellow's reading, if Philip hears him reading, that tells us he's reading out loud, which was common custom then. I don't know if you read out loud or not. I usually don't. Usually don't read out loud, but it was a custom then to read out loud. A lot of folks believe you retain more if you will read out loud. In any event, now, if we see somebody reading the Bible, I don't know, if you're at work, you've got a lunch area, and somebody's got their copy of the Bible open, and you have opportunity to go and talk to them, it might not be the best question to ask them. Do you understand what you're reading? Because they might get on the defensive. What are the subjects that are hard to talk to people about? Politics and religion. So you might say, hey, you're reading a great book. I love that book as well. Or what passage are you reading? Or something along that line. The situation determines the question to ask. Obviously, if you hear they're reading the book of Revelation, you might ask, do you understand what you're reading? Could you help me understand that book? Because I have struggled with that. There might be different ways of breaking the ice. Pat the eunuch on the back, right? pat him on the back in his response. He doesn't get mad. He freely admits what? I don't know. I don't understand what I'm reading. In fact, how can I understand this? Except somebody teaches me, guides me. I need somebody to explain this to me. And this is another great trait about the eunuch. He's a man of humility. We have to swallow our pride, don't we? To admit to people, this is something I just don't know. Could you help me understand this? Adam, could you help me understand Locke's, whatever it is you talked about? I'd have to say that because I don't have a clue what any of that is. But you have to be an humble person to respond this way, and he's a great man. I can't accept somebody should explain this to me. Remember when Jesus taught the parable of the sower, he talked about 4 different types of soil. And he applied that to people. Which of the 4 types of soil would the eunuch have been? Wayside, stony, thorny, or what was the 4th? Good ground. Good ground. These are hard to find, aren't they? It's hard to find good ground people, but you'll never find them if you don't what? Try. You got to try. You got to try. So this would be an example of good ground. This fellow's got an open Bible. He's got an open mind. He wants to soak up the truth and be taught the truth. Now, this does not imply that it is impossible for a person by himself or herself to understand the Bible. We don't take this question to mean that nobody can understand the Bible unless they're taught by somebody else, because there have been some self-taught people who have taught themselves the truth and obeyed the truth themselves, by themselves, without ever being taught by anybody. Now, they may not have understood Isaiah 53, obviously. That's a different matter. But what to do to be saved, that's something that even we can by self teach ourselves. This is a difficult passage, as Adam has said. I don't know what I'm reading. I know it's a prophet. I need some help. And he even asked Philip, would you come up to my chariot? Get in. Sit down with me. Let's talk about Isaiah. Well, again, the place of the scripture which he read was this, and again, this is from Isaiah 53, 7 and 8. He was led as a sheep to the slaughter, and like a lamb silent before his shearer, so opened he not his mouth. Who is the he of this passage? Christ, Jesus Christ. This is Christ. And Philip is going to stress that only Jesus fulfills Isaiah's prophecy in every detail. Led as a sheep to the slaughter. He wasn't drugged, was he? Sometimes you'd have to use force with mules to get them to go somewhere, but sheep, no difficulty in leading them to where you want them to go. And Jesus, they didn't have to drag him off to Pilate and the Jewish council. He was simply led from the garden to the council to eventually be slaughtered, much like a sheep would be. Like a lamb silent before his shearer, he did not open his mouth. That is, you recall in many of the trials of Jesus, the Bible says he answered them not a word. Now, he did speak briefly on occasion, but for the most part, he didn't say anything. There was no need to say anything. They had their mind opened up, or made up rather. 33, in his humiliation. How was Jesus humiliated in all of that? And what were some ways in which Jesus was humiliated? Beaten. Spat upon. Stripped.
Destroying his reputation.
Just absolutely mocking him. Your king will put a purple robe on you and a crown of thorns. The crucifixion itself, the victims were usually naked. I mean, the body there for everybody to see, just a humiliating. The Bible is obviously right, and certainly so when it says his humiliation, his judgment, justice. He did not receive justice. Notice this phrase, who shall declare his generation? Now that is translated various ways, one of which is, who shall tell his descendants? Jesus died at a young age, at a very young age. Who will tell people on down the line about him because he died so young is one interpretation of that. His life is taken from the earth. In other words, this was an untimely death as far as man was concerned. So the eunuch says, I don't know what I'm reading about here. Adam, 34 through the rest of the chapter.
And the eunuch said, Philip, about whom I ask you, does the prophet say this, about himself or about someone else? Then Philip opened his mouth, and beginning with this scripture, he told him the good news about Jesus. And as they were going along the road, they came to some water, and the eunuch said, see, here is water. What prevents me from being baptized? And Philip said, if you believe with all your heart, you may. And he answered and said, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And he commanded the chariot to stop, and they both went down into the water, Philip and the eunuch, and he baptized him. And when they came up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord carried Philip away, and the eunuch saw him no more and went on his way rejoicing. But Philip found himself at Azotus. And as he passed through, he preached the gospel to all the towns until he came to Caesarea.
Very good. Back up to verse number 34. I believe is where we are, 34. So we've read this, and the eunuch simply asked Philip, of whom is Isaiah the prophet speaking? The Jews had a tough time with Isaiah 53. They believed the Messiah would be king, but they never believed the Messiah would suffer. So they said that Isaiah 53 did not apply to the Messiah. They said Isaiah may have been talking about himself, may have been some other prophet, may have been some other unnamed spokesman of God, but this could not have been the Messiah because they did not believe the Messiah would ever suffer. Which leaves the question, well, if it's not the Messiah, and that's his question, who is the prophet speaking of? Is he speaking of himself? No. Is he speaking of some other man? Well, yes, God in the flesh, Christ. Philip sets the record straight, beginning in 35. He opened his mouth and began where he was. As we study with people, we want to start where they are. If I'm speaking with a denominational friend, there's really no need to try to convince them of the existence of God. No need of doing that because they would agree that there is a God. If I'm speaking with an atheist friend, I'm going to begin with him in a different place than I am with a denominational friend. Okay? So that's the difference. The place to begin is sometimes something hard to determine, but it wasn't for Philip. We'll just start where you have the Bible open, and we'll go from there. So the same scripture from Isaiah 53, he preached unto him Jesus, which tells us that Isaiah was talking about Jesus. That is the fulfillment of that prophecy. The Old Testament had a lot to say about Jesus. And so he began there. And how long they rode together, we don't know. How long they studied together, we don't know. But they studied long enough and about other matters that 36 says, as they were traveling, they came to water, and the eunuch says, here is a body of water. What hinders or prevents me from being baptized? Now, the question is, how would the eunuch have known about baptism? Because Isaiah 53 doesn't say one thing about baptism. They had to talk more. They would have had to have studied together more. The text says he preached unto him Jesus, which involves a lot of things, right? It would have involved how you get into Jesus. We have a condensed version here. We don't have everything that was said here, everything that was taught here. But we know that Philip taught the man enough where the eunuch knew himself he was lost, and he needed to do something to be saved. So they traveled, they came to water. We don't know what body of water this would have been. We don't even know the exact road this was, but there were plenty of bodies of water there suitable for baptism. So what hinders me from being baptized? I cannot preach Jesus without preaching baptism. I cannot. And we know it was important to Jesus, important to John, important to the disciples, the apostles, important to us today. We might, if we had been there and we had been, different religion, we might have said to the eunuch, "What's your hurry? We'll wait till Sunday for you to be baptized. What's your hurry? I mean, this water here, it's not the cleanest water on the planet. I guess it'd be all right for drinking. You let your animal drink from it. I don't know that I want to be baptized in that old water. We'll just wait till we have clearer water and more people. We'll wait for the church to vote on you. You really need to have the church vote on you before you're baptized." This is what a lot of folks would have said, because that's what a lot of folks say today when it comes to baptism. Did the eunuch want to put this off? Not at all. Enough water there for me to be baptized. I need to know what I need to do. I need to know what else do I need to do? What is preventing me from doing this? Here's the water. Here I am. And then Philip says in verse 37, "If thou believest with all thine heart, thou mayest." He answered and said, "I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God." If you're using one of the newer translations, you may not even have a verse 37 in your Bible. Or you may have that in brackets, or they may have stuck it down in the footnotes or cross references with a note saying something like early manuscripts do not contain this verse. We'll leave all that for another lesson. We'll simply say this. What we're talking about here is emphasized in many passages in the Bible. Romans 10, Matthew chapter 10, if Jesus says, "If you'll confess me now, I'll what? I'll confess you later. If you deny me now, I'll deny you later," and so forth. So we'll take the verse as it is. An obvious prerequisite to being baptized is what? Before you can be baptized, you first must believe. Believe. Okay, you first must believe. We do not teach salvation by baptism only. I'm afraid some sort of characterize us as that belief. That's not true. We do not teach, the Bible does not teach salvation by baptism only. There's no need to baptize somebody if they don't have faith in Christ. You're just getting them wet. Okay? So a prerequisite to baptism is faith. Belief that Christ is the Son of God. That's sometimes called the good confession, but as we stress, the confessing of Christ is not just done with our lips, but also with our life. It's not just acknowledging, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. By that confession, we are committing our lives to Christ. A person needs to be old enough to understand the concept of commitment to Christ before being baptized. I know, and this is sometimes a good dilemma for parents when one of their children will come up and say, "I want to be baptized," at a very young age. And the child is baptized, and then when the Lord's Supper is passed on Sunday, the mama has to jab the child awake to wake him up to take the Lord's Supper. Did the child understand what commitment to Christ is all about? Well, I'm not his judge, but I think that needs to be stressed. What does it mean to commit your life to Christ? And so, there was faith, and then, verse 38, who's the he? He commanded the chariot to stand still. The eunuch. It's his chariot, right? It's his chariot. When you go into somebody's house and you want to study the Bible with them and the TV's on, you don't turn the TV off. You will turn people off real quick if you take charge of that situation. We were down at Parchman one year, and one of our members who was with us, the TV was on, just marched over there in front of all those prisoners and turned the TV off. I'm thinking, let me get out of here. You don't take charge in a situation like that if you want to live. My. So the eunuch commands the chariot to stand still, to stop. Whoa, whoa, horsey, whoa, is the kid song we sing. And it stops, and they went down both into the water. Just the eunuch? No. Philip and the eunuch go down into the water. 39 says they came up out of the water, which tells us what about baptism? It's a burial. I know some religions teach you can take a cup of water and pour it on somebody's head, or take just a handful of water and sprinkle it on somebody, and they say that's baptism. If so, why bother getting down in the water? Why bother coming up out of the water? Philip could easily have reached down, gotten a handful of water, and sprinkled it on the fellow and be done with it. Baptism is a burial. It is, Paul says it's a burial, it is an immersion. Remember that John baptized in a certain area because there was much water there. If sprinkling or pouring is sufficient, you don't need a lot of water. But to immerse, you need at least enough water to bury somebody in water momentarily, and then to bring them up. And so this tells us, of course, this example and other tells us that baptism is immersion. Well, after you baptize somebody, you want to get them up, right? You don't want to leave them in the water. So they get out of the water, verse 39, they were come up out of the water. And then, for whatever reason, the Spirit of God, it depends on your translation here. King James says, caught away Philip. What do you have? Carried away. I think it's the New American Standard that says snatched Philip away. Snatched. I don't know that this is a miraculous, I mean, obviously God wanted to miraculously take Philip and lift him in the air and put him over here. There's no question God could have done that, and that may be what this means. Or it may simply mean that God gave Philip instructions to do what? Go somewhere else. That's probably what it means. The Spirit of the Lord told Philip, you go here. And that's the concept of carrying Philip away. It doesn't matter either way. And the eunuch saw him no more.
Kind of seemed like he just disappeared.
He didn't see him anymore after that, did he? And we don't really know the reason for that. We can speculate. It might have been that the eunuch might have been tempted to, instead of going home, do what? Stay with Philip. Stay with Philip, and that's not what would be ideal. If the eunuch stays with Philip, that means Ethiopia what? Doesn't get a chance to hear the truth.
I was just going to ask, I just thought about this. Was this a practice that he would have gone to Jerusalem to worship? I mean,
if it were a feast day, yes. You know, the three major feasts, if you were a Jew, you were to go to Jerusalem to worship.
right.
And now we can't prove that this was a feast. We don't know that.
But we assume he was a proselyte, right?
Yeah, obviously we would assume that.
Right.
Because, I mean, he had plenty of religions there in Ethiopia if he just wanted to be a religious man. Somehow he came to know about Judaism.
That's what I was, something had to get to him first.
Right.
In Ethiopia.
Right.
That's what I was trying to.
Right. And, you know, a lot of things we just don't know, other than he is a highly religious man, obviously. And he will now, and we're assuming, I think rightly so, he's going to take with him the gospel to Ethiopia. Tradition says he did. And tradition says he even converted the queen. Tradition. Now, that's not the Bible. We would hope that. Is the eunuch a happy man? Oh, happy day. We sing whenever somebody's baptized. His sins are forgiven. His name's in the book of life. He's on the road to heaven. He's on the way back home, but he's on the road to heaven. It's a happy, happy day. And then 40 tells us where either the Spirit of the Lord carried Philip to or told him to go at Azotus. That's about 20 miles north of where they are in that general area. And he continued heading up the coast, Philip did. Some have called this preaching his way back home. As he goes home, he's preaching. Preached in all the cities until he comes to Caesarea. And then we'll meet Philip again there in Acts chapter 21. So we're not through with Philip by any means. But for now, we'll put a peg there as we're out of time and pick up in chapter 9 next week. But again, may this